Hello and welcome back to Seconds Out. It is once again, the pleasure is all mine to be picking the brain of the one and only Kevin Barry as the heavyweights look to be set on their collision course this weekend on the Day of Reckoning. Kevin, it's a title befitting bringing someone like you in to get your thoughts in the Day of Reckoning. How are you doing, sir?
Mate, look, I'm doing well, and I tell you what, it's a really exciting card, this one, and I think the boxing fans all around the world are getting an early Christmas present. To have the quality of fights on one single card, um, as much as it's a unique special event, I can only feel for the promoters that they've left a lot of television dollars on the table having this fight so close to Christmas and at ungodly hours. Like I know that in New Zealand, it comes in at 5 a.m. in the morning. It's 10 a.m. here in Vegas. So because of that, I think there could have been a lot more dollars spent, but also the timing prior to Christmas, where a lot of the fans will be out doing Christmas festivities, but a lot of the money will be spent on gifts for kids and things like that. So, but hey, we shouldn't complain. It's an early Christmas present and one that we're all really looking forward to.
Completely indeed. And someone who sacrificed his Christmas for this fight is Joseph Parker. He won't be able to get back in time for Christmas, but he's looking to get back to his home country with a win against Deontay Wilder. Now, you're someone who knows Joseph Parker very, very well. How will he have to perform in the ring to get the victory over such a heavy-hitting KO artist like Deontay Wilder?
Well, look, I tell you what, this is a very big challenge for Joe Parker. There's no doubt about that, and he's going to have to try and find a career best performance against literally the most dangerous puncher ever in the heavyweight division. Um, it's a fight that he has to not only be at his best, but he has to be focused and concentrate for 36 minutes, 3 minutes of every round. I think one of the weaknesses of Joe Parker throughout his career is there's different times in fights where he loses his concentration. I remember for a number of times in many of his early fights, during the fight, he'd just look over at me and I'd go, "Oh my God, Joe, for God's sake, your focus, your eyes should be on the guy in front of you." Or he'd look over to where his mum was, or he has to be focused in this fight. We know the power that Wilder has. Um, we know the danger that this fight is. But look, this fight is also a tremendous piece of business for Joseph Parker. There was no doubt about that. And like he's getting one very rewarding Christmas present, being able to be in this fight with Deontay Wilder in Saudi Arabia. There's no doubt about that. Like, you look at 2022 where he rolled the dice, he got himself in the position to fight Joe Joyce for the mandatory, or for the mandatory and the interim WBO. Um, Joe Joyce, who's a big guy but a big slow guy, was able to put hands on Joseph Parker, and that was a very tough physical encounter for Joe. Um, I think you look at the career of every fighter, and you can go down the records, and you can see there's one fight in every fighter's career where the fighter is never really the same again, where it takes away a piece of your soul, and that was one of those very tough, very physical, very damaging fights. 2023 has been a very good year for him. He has rebounded back against, very, let's say it as it is, very soft opponents. They brought him back with like a cruiserweight, a little known guy in Australia, and then Simon Keane, who's never ever fought anyone. And he's picked up 3 wins, so which pushes that fight against Joe Joyce, in the background. He's also enabling to do more work in the gym with his new trainer. So, this opportunity to fight a Deontay Wilder is the perfect decision at this time in Joe's career. He's been a pro since 2012. So these sort of fights, when they become available, you have to take them. And when we look at Deontay Wilder, this is the perfect time to be in the ring with someone like Wilder. He's coming off a trilogy with Tyson Fury. We know that those 3 fights with Fury stole a piece of Deontay Wilder's soul. They were very physical, very damaging, especially the 3rd fight. It was a brutal fight. But in a brutal fight, Wilder showed great heart, the fact that he had Fury down twice and then Fury had him down 3 times in one of the great heavyweight battles of all times. But, the fact that was over 2 years ago and Wilder's had 1 round of boxing in the ring over the last 2 years, ring rust and inactivity are very big things to overcome. We know he's done a lot of work in sparring, but actual real fight situation is a totally different thing. And this is why I'm very pleased with Parker's schedule this year, because he's always looked best when he's stayed active, when he's stayed in shape, hasn't put the pounds on, and has been able to keep his focus on the boxing. And this will be his 4th fight of the year, so he should really be jumping at the bit to put a career best performance on.
With that said, Kevin, what is his best route to victory? I saw that Tyson Fury has lent his advice to Joseph Parker and said, look, all you've got to do really is to avoid that big right hand. Is it as simple as that? Can Joseph take parts of the Fury game plan across the 3 fights that he had with Wilder and apply that to him this weekend to get the victory?
Well, let's remember for a start, Tyson Fury is 6'9". Yeah. Joseph Parker is 6'4". So which makes things a little different right off the bat. Stating he has to avoid the right hand, I think if you stopped a guy at the bus stop and asked him, if you're going to fight Deontay Wilder, what would you do? And they go, I won't get hit with the right hand. We all know that you can't get hit with the right hand. It's just like, God, I remember when I used to train David Tua, it was, we know he's going to throw the left hook. Don't get hit with the left hook. And it would always come eventually. It's like Wilder's right hand. I remember in 2017 sitting down beside Joseph Parker in Alabama, and we were there to watch Wilder fight Gerald Washington. And I remember saying to Joe then, oh my God, your skill level would run rings around Deontay Wilder. And we watched Gerald Washington win 3 of the first 4 rounds. And I said to Joe, this guy's got terrible skill. And we were looking at it because Joe had just won the belt against Andy Ruiz, and Wilder was there defending. And round 5 come along, and Washington was well ahead on points, and Wilder threw 1 right hand, and the fight was over. 2 years later, we're in Vegas again, sitting with Joe. We were watching Deontay Wilder fight the rematch with Luis Ortiz, and Ortiz won 5 of the first 6 rounds, was completely outboxing Deontay Wilder. And round 7, he threw 1 right hand and knocked him spark cold. This is the great thing that he possesses. Now, we know that in his 43 wins, he's got 42 of them by knockout. He is a scary, dangerous guy. No doubt about that. But the other thing is, like, he's lost 2 of his last 3 fights. He's 38 years old. He had a trilogy with Tyson Fury. We know that at 38 years old, his reflexes and his timing are not what they were when he was 28 years old. We know that his legs are not the legs of a young man. So saying this, the one thing we know about a fighter, and you can go right back across time, is one of the last things that a fighter, especially a puncher, loses is his power. So we know that Deontay Wilder is going to be dangerous from round 1 to round 12. And I think focus and concentration have to be two of the biggest things for Parker in this fight. You know, and also the way he fights him. He has to fight him either all in or all out. If he gets caught sitting there doing nothing in the middle zone, that right hand is going to come and it's going to be damaging. So he's going to have to either work his way in and fight him on his chest or be all the way out. And I think for a guy who was such a tremendous boxer early in his career, who had great footwork and great hand speed, he needs to try to find some of that in this fight. You know, he needs to make the angles. He needs to get on the side of Wilder, and he has to hope that Wilder has a lot of ring rust and needs a few rounds. I see Parker winning a lot of the early rounds. And if Parker can find himself in this fight when the bell goes for round 7, I give him a very good chance of winning the fight. But, you know, it's those first 6 rounds are going to be very, very dangerous. And there's going to be some very heavy right hands coming at him. The other big factor in this fight that I believe will really be a telling thing, and he doesn't have to get out and throw the punches, but will have a big bearing on this fight, is Malik Scott. Now, Malik is a very smart boxing guy. I employed Malik as our sparring partner with Joseph Parker during Joe's peak years. And Malik was with us for 5 or 6 camps, sparred over 200 rounds with Parker. He knows him very, very well. And I think he's done a tremendous job since he took over the reins as coach of Deontay Wilder. I think Malik is, he's developing into an excellent coach. And I know with the times that I spoke with him, and having him in camp around me for a long time, he's got a very good boxing brain. And I think that his game plan and his strategies in this fight will be very influential in the outcome of this fight.
I remember when Joe Parker was on the rise, he made a thing of his chin, his ability to take a punch being a thing, and the hashtag was never knocked down. Parker's chin is still widely regarded as a very solid chin.
Very good chin.
Can he rely on that to a degree in this fight with the punch power coming back at him? And inversely as well too, for him to get the victory, he has to be able to have the punch power to deter Wilder. Does he carry that as well?
Well, look, I don't think that Joseph Parker's he's not one of the heaviest punchers in the heavyweight division, that's for sure. Joe's power, especially earlier in his career, his speed was his power. Yeah. As he's focused a lot more on lifting heavy weights and less mobility in the ring, I think he's thrown less punches. They might be stronger punches, but it also that extra size and muscle on him have slowed down his hand speed and slowed down his movement. Against a guy like Wilder, I think that movement is very, very important. You don't want to get caught in front. You want to be making angles. You want to be throwing feints. You want to use your hand speed. These are things that. And the other, of course, the most important thing when you're fighting a guy like Deontay Wilder is you can't have your left hand down by your hip. And I noticed in the last fight against Simon Keane, which I was really pleased to see, his hands were up a lot higher. And that's going to be very, very important. When you start dropping that left hand down and you're fighting a guy with a lethal right hand, you're asking for trouble. Look, we know Parker's got a good chin. There is no doubt about that. And I remember before we fought Anthony Joshua, part of our marketing strategy was, never been down, never been hurt, all that sort of thing. Well, we know now he's been down twice with Dillian White. He was down once with Chisora, and he was knocked out by Joe Joyce. So he has a good chin, but he can also be hurt. None of those guys that I just mentioned before power compares to Deontay Wilder. So this is a dangerous fight, and as I started our conversation by saying, Joseph Parker will need a career best performance, and is he capable of it? Most definitely. But everything must be on point to win this fight.
Final one before I move on to the second fight on topic. It's come out from Deontay Wilder, the feeling that in the lead up to this fight week with Joseph Parker, he stated that when Wilder had the title and Joseph Parker had the title, he felt that Joseph Parker kind of ran away from the opportunity to unify against him. And didn't want the fight in that period of time. Was that ever the case? What's the story from your side of
No,
the
it's not.
street
It's
here?
not a story. It's a fact.
Mm,
It's a fact that if we had not put together a huge fight in front of 80,000 people at Principality Stadium, then we would have fought Deontay Wilder. But the business and the size of the unification fight was so much bigger with Parker fighting Anthony Joshua. Wilder was not even an option.
mm.
So it was just it was a business decision, and surely someone like Wilder, who's been in the sport for so long, and his team have been in the sport for so long, it just comes down to business. It doesn't come down to running. It comes down to making the right decision at the right time.
That clears up that one, and we wait for the fight this weekend. Can't wait for it. And I appreciate your breakdown of the fight too there, Kevin. And I want to get your breakdown as well on the main event, that being Anthony Joshua returning to the ring, an active year for him against Otto Wallin. I've spoke to a number of people and had differing points of view, and people suggesting this is a tough fight, and others suggesting it's a not so tough fight from an Anthony Joshua perspective. You lay out the table for me. Where do you stand on this fight between the two?
Oh my God, I think this is a very, very tough fight. This is a 50-50 fight.
Hmm.
And for the life of me, why you would, when you're having trouble finding out whether you're a boxer or a puncher, he's had trouble mentally with himself. Why would you fight such a difficult guy? If you go right back to 2019, when Otto Wallin fought Tyson Fury, he has been avoided by every big name since then. And you may remember, I spoke to you several years ago when finally Otto Wallin was given a fight and signed a fight, Dillian White. And literally 6 weeks into that training camp, White and his team realized that they'd taken on the wrong guy and developed an injury. And when he got over that injury, no one wanted to mention Otto Wallin's name because they knew that they should never be in the ring with him. And I told everyone that Wallen would beat Dillian White. And Otto Wallin is a very, very good fighter. There is no doubt about that. He's tall, he's skillful, he's got a good chin. And in this fight, we're asking Anthony Joshua to go back to the menacing, fearsome fighter that he was 5-6 years ago, when he was the most scariest, dangerous fighter in heavyweight boxing. There's a lot of pressure on Anthony Joshua in this fight. And then when you factor that in with the fact that if Wilder wins and Joshua wins, they fight each other next year.
Mm.
Why then, if you were preparing to fight or seriously going to fight Deontay Wilder, would you take a 6'5.5" southpaw? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Um, I just can't. I think it's a dangerous fight. I think it's a fight that can Joshua win it? Yes. Can he knock him out? Yes. If he starts believing in the power that we know he possesses, yes, he could knock him out. Could he beat him on points? Yeah, I'm sure he could if he uses his jab and puts the right hand behind it. But there's a lot of things that have to come right for him in this fight. I see this being a long, drawn out fight, and a fight that I hope Joshua wins. I really do, because I want to see him fight the winner of Wilder and Parker.
Mm.
But there's a lot of pressure on him in this fight, and then when you also factor in that Ben Davidson's taken over the coaching role, it's a big fight for Ben.
Mm.
I know that Ben's an excellent coach. He made his name as a very good defensive coach, and yet he's been given the job as making Joshua more aggressive. So there's a lot of pressure on Ben, because if he gets this right, and say Joshua goes out there and has an impressive knockout, I think we might find, Derek James loses that position and Ben Davison becomes the trainer. So there's a lot at stake for Ben in this fight as well.
Yeah, and it's a similar sort of story in the sense when we talk about Parker, who maybe can take some form of the game plan into from the Fury fights into the Wilder fight. Similarly, Ben Davison has been in the corner for Fury when Fury fought Otto Wallin. In that sort of sense as well, can some parts of that game plan be taken into that fight with Wallen, do you feel?
Yes and no. Look, let's remember that was a life and death fight for Fury that night. And he did not have his way with Wallen. Wallen gave him a very, very tough fight. So, the strategies that he used that night were not his best. Sure, he's seen him up close, but this is 5 years ago.
Mm.
Wallen has had put some really nice performances together. Wallen has been so avoided by fighters. You look at his last fight against Murat Gassiev.
Yeah.
Gassiev's another fighter that he has one loss on his record, as we know, to Usyk. Gassiev is a dangerous, hard-hitting man. And in fact, the people who have sparred with Gassiev, and I've spoken to several of them over the years, they say it's the hardest they've ever been hit in their life. And that's why it was always inevitable that he was going to move up to the heavyweight division, because he's a scary, powerful guy. Lacks a bit of height, but has huge power. Well, Wallen had... I know Wallen beat him comfortably, but it was a close fight. But he had no trouble with the power of Gassiev. Wallen's a durable guy. He's an experienced fighter and the guy that knows how to roll with the punches. I just think, I think this is a tough fight.
Tough fight indeed in the offing, and other things that have been questioned about Anti Joshua for a long while really is the mentality, for better for worse. When you have that spotlight, and especially when it comes to Anti Joshua, everything will be picked apart regardless of what he does. Do you feel in amongst this trainer change and trainer change again, albeit temporarily or full forward going forward, that there are questions to be asked and answered regarding Anti Joshua's mentality if he is to claim the world title for the third time as his desire?
Look, I think there definitely is, and I think if we're totally honest, I don't think Joshua's confidence has ever been the same since Andy Ruiz knocked him out in New York. He tried to reinvent himself. And that, at the time, the only thing I could compare it to was the way when Klitschko was knocked out 2 or 3 times early in his career, and he reinvented himself and said, "I'm not going to stand there. I'm not going to engage. It's too dangerous. I'm going to do fight to my strengths, which is my size and my jab." And he did that and became the heavyweight champion for over 10 years. I think that Joshua took a leaf out of his book and he tried to reinvent himself. It worked well in the rematch with Ruiz, and it was the way he had to fight Ruiz. He had to box him from the distance and not engage with him. But then after that, he should have probably gone back to the style that he had that made him the most ferocious, feared heavyweight in the world. I believe that he's been stuck between both places for a long time, and it's been very frustrating watching some of his recent fights.
Mm.
We know he's powerful. We know he hits hugely hard, um, but he's not been fighting to his strengths. It's almost like he's afraid to let his cannon go. And I think that's going to be the challenge for Ben Davison in this fight. And like, we know fighting southpaws, the straight right hand is an orthodox fighter's weapon, the straight right hand and the left hook. Well, he throws both those punches well. It's just, has he got the confidence to let that right hand go when it really matters?
Kevin, I want to close off with AJ and his future. It's talked about this Wilder fight being in the offing, but should he find himself on the end of defeat, as is plausible this weekend, where does he go from there?
Oh God, I think if he loses, which but gosh, I really, as a fan, I really hope he doesn't lose, because I want to see him to get back in the mix. There's some really nice fights that people want to see him involved in.
Yeah.
Um, if he was to lose here, it'd be very, very hard for him to get back. I think what's more importantly is, we've got that Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk fight sitting out there, and as a fan, and I am a real boxing fan, I want to see that fight happen. I want to see a unified champion. I don't want to see that fight not happen. I don't want to see the belts fragmented. I want to see a unified champ, and the unified champ fighting all the biggest and best names out there, because they're the fights that real fans want to see.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, I completely agree with you and concur. It's been a pleasure picking your brain on these heavyweight fights heading into Saturday. I'm looking forward to the next chat already. That's what you do with imparting your knowledge and opinion on the sport. Pleasure is all mine, as always, as is. Thank you so much for speaking Seconds Out. All the best.
Ivan, Merry Christmas, my friend,
And
and
Merry Christmas, of course.
talk to you soon.